Well, the scene is obviously intended to have some amusement to it, so I hope people were not offended. My mother-in-law always talks about how all food must be cooked con ganas. It must be cooked with love, with affection for those who are about to eat it. Obviously, in this particular scene, both Esquivel in the novel and Arau in the film are taking it a stage further. Everything about the meal is ordinary. It even involves the theme of roses, which is so important to death constant beyond love. But something both entirely possible and practical and concrete has happened. An amazing dish is being served to the family. But somehow the young woman with the long black hair, Tita, has managed to cook in her passionate love for the young man. And everybody at the table is going to actually taste that love. I want to just put up a little image where we look briefly at Eyes of a Blue Dog, in many ways often considered one of Garcia Marquez's most famous stories. So rather than looking at me, I'll stay as a little image here. I'll give you something more specific. Frida Kahlo, in the 1940s, 1930s and 1940s, and moving later, famous painter and writer who also moves around the Caribbean and around Mexico, a distinctive thing for a woman artist in this period. But she specifically has herself photographed several times with dogs and with mirrors. And dogs and mirrors are obviously the central iconography that we have in Eyes of a Blue Dog. So I want to give you this image and also this one, but let me share with you the text. So whether in paint, and Frida Kahlo is first and foremost a painter, often of self-portraits, or in words, I invite you to think about this phrase: I never paint dreams or nightmares. I only paint my own reality. So I'll then give you Kahlo as the same image of, in a sense, looking over your back, wondering if you're seeing anything or imagining something or seeing actually what is fundamentally a reflection of yourself. Eyes of a Blue Dog is very much about the conflation of the real and the imaginary, an uncanny story about two people looking at each other. And the grammar of Spanish, as well as the signature Garcia Marquez, tells us that the person who is the I is male, and the person who is being addressed is she, is female, or identifies as that in the story. So the story begins on page 50 with, then she looked at me. I thought she was looking at me for the first time. And here you can see the spirit of Virginia Woolf, this creation of something that is both subjective, what the narrator is projecting, but maybe there really is something out there. A couple of lines later, it seems to go back into very realistic terms, or to continue realistically. I lit a cigarette. I took a drag on the harsh, strong smoke before spinning in the chair, balancing on one of the rear legs. So much detail, right? So concrete, not abstract. The exact things that he's doing in the moment. And then he remembers an unusual thing when he says something to her. Eyes of a Blue Dog, this mysterious, almost like a spell, incantatory phrase that's all the way through the text. And we wonder, is it happening? Or is it something that he's imagining? And he watches her. That's why I wanted you to have the particular photograph of Frida Kahlo in front of you. I saw her walk over to the dressing table. That's where Kahlo is in the image. I watched her appear in the circular glass. Okay, sorry, it's a square glass. The circular glass of the mirror looking at me, now at the end of a back and forth of mathematical light. So sometimes, if you pursue the details of the next 2 pages, it seems that the narrator is turned to face the woman. At other times, he's going to continue describing her, but he makes a point of telling us that he isn't facing her. He's got his back to her. In the middle of 51, he says, I knew that she was sitting in front of the mirror again. I knew this. How do you know this? Do you know it by intuition? Or is he just making it up because he can't see her? He's facing the wrong direction. I knew that she was sitting in front of the mirror again, seeing my back, which had had time to reach the depths of the mirror and be caught by her look, which had also been just enough time to reach the depths and return, before the hand had time to start the second turn, until her lips were anointed with crimson from the first turn of her head in front of the mirror. And they have a conversation. Maybe he's seeing her, maybe he's projecting her, maybe she's reflected in the glass, and therefore he can see her standing behind in this moment. And they talk in ways that are both concrete, but also sort of vague and dreamlike. On 52, she says, "Sometimes I think I'm made of metal." And he replies, "Sometimes in other dreams, I thought you were only a little bronze statue in the corner of some museum. Maybe that's why you're so cold," playing with the coolness to the touch of a metal object and the coldness of a heart. It's somewhat dreamy, and we begin to wonder, is he talking to an inanimate statue that he just wants to animate and imagine a personality for, or is he talking to a woman about a statue of which she reminds him? By the top of 53, we do get a strange sense of, this is not the first time this has happened. What kind of exchange is this? She says, "I'm the one who comes into your dreams every night and tells you eyes of a blue dog." They continue to talk back and forth, and Garcia Marquez, it continues to make everything completely concrete. Tells us how his chair rocks back and forth, tells us how her tightened teeth gleam over the flame of the candlelight in the middle of 54. Constant images of warming up and cooling down. At the bottom of page 55, a strange reversal takes place. It had so far seemed as though either he was talking and she was real, albeit a bit strange, or he was imagining her and talking to his dream. But at the bottom of 55, she says, indifferently, as if she doesn't care. So many of these modern texts will have this idea of apathy, of nonchalance, of not being too careful about anything. She says indifferently, as though it doesn't matter, at the bottom of 55, "I think I dreamed about you once, about this same room." And I told her, "That's it. I'm beginning to remember now." And she said, "How strange. It's certain that we've met in other dreams." So like Proust's little boy who on that cusp between waking and sleep can't quite remember what's real, can't quite remember what's happened, because every night he goes to bed in this strange, lonely way. So too the narrator here makes the same, if you like, threshold experience for us between sleep and dream. The dreams, and either being awake or asleep, especially being between, can't last. So he stays still, we're told, at the bottom of 56, with his face towards the wall as she's asked, so that she's behind, he can't see her. And a clock strikes, so we get the entrance of the real again. But then her voice shows up, and she says, "Don't open that door. The hallway is full of difficult dreams." And I asked her, "How do you know?" And she told me, "Because I was there a moment ago, and I had to come back when I discovered I was sleeping on my heart." At the very end of the story from 1950, "You're the only man who doesn't remember anything of what he's dreamed after he wakes up." So this moment of dreaming where you don't remember the past or the future, and when you are in intensively and not in the present, is a kind of refuge for the narrator. Don't go out into the hallway, the bright daylit world. That's where things are difficult. In here, in the dream world we've created, you and me, or imaginary me and you might think of Borges' story here, we create a space that is a little less difficult. And yet, sadly, when we re-enter the hallway, we leave the magic room and step out into the world, we don't remember what that moment of connection was like. And every night you can say the same strange phrase, "Eyes of the blue dog," and it will sound like it's something new and fresh. I gave you two stories. They have things in common, but I think they're also stylistically quite different. So where does storytelling come from? Again, he writes very long and in many ways like 100 Years of Solitude, very grand texts. But Garcia Marquez has a particular view about how he came to storytelling, and he actually genders it in a way that I think is interesting and important for some of the discussions that we've had. This is another little piece of the documentary, so I wanted him to tell you in his own words. And he's thinking about, what does he write about? And why did he choose to be a writer at all? What is there that's his topic, his subject matter, and why does he want to address it through creative writing? So here's what García Márquez said about his process and his inspiration.
Lo importante es que éramos los dos únicos hombres de una casa donde había muchísimas mujeres. Entonces para mí era una vida muy curiosa, porque las mujeres presididas por mi abuela vivían en un mundo sobrenatural, un mundo fantástico donde todo era posible, donde las cosas más maravillosas eran simplemente cotidianas, y yo me acostumbré a pensar así. Pero el abuelo era probablemente el ser más concreto que yo conocí, y sus historias eran las historias de la guerra civil, las peripecias de la política, y me hablaba a mí como si yo fuera un adulto. Entonces yo vivía repartido entre esos dos mundos. El del abuelo, que era muy concreto y con el cual pasaba la mayor parte del día porque él me dedicaba muchas horas. Y el de las mujeres, que era un mundo que se compartía con el del abuelo, pero con el cual yo me quedaba solo de noche.
So I'll leave that image of the circus in the background. So I hope you see it in parallel. I was hoping it might come to you between what he says here and Achebe. He lived in two worlds, the world of the child with his grandmother, and we know how powerful grandmothers are from Pushkin onwards in particular. And he also lived in the daytime world of his political public grandfather. But of course, Gabriel, the boy, is living in both worlds, and his stories bring the two of them together. Telling stories for him, it's a very gender binary, very traditional model that he has. Telling stories is what women do in the evening. Being out in the world of activity, of violence, of risk, of politics, to anticipate the story Death Constant Beyond Love, that's Grandpa's world. And he, as the child, and now as the adult writer, because he's been treated like an adult, is going to put the two together and create this extraordinary combination, which is magical realism.